We're learning details of a secret agreement, stunning details, between the Taliban and the U.S. military. It was put into place to help Americans reach the gates of Kabul's airport in the final days of the evacuation mission.
CNN's Barbara Starr is at the Pentagon. Barbara, tell us about your new reporting.
Well, hello to both of you. Look, we all knew, because the military talked about it, that they had what they call a pragmatic relationship with the Taliban, that they were on the phone with them multiple times a day, that they were coordinating, if you will, deconflicting, making sure there was nothing that could be misconstrued. So that existed. But what we are learning today is multiple defense officials tell CNN it went much deeper. There was, in fact, a secret arrangement with the Taliban for them to go to muster points outside the airport where Americans would have been told to gather with their documents to get into the airport. And this went on several times a day and for several days. The Taliban would gather up the Americans at these predetermined muster points and help them get to the gates of the airport where U.S. troops were waiting to guide them in. We hadn't had a complete understanding of how deep all of this went. Now, we should say, of course, there are many reports of Americans not being able to get past the regular Taliban checkpoints with their paperwork being turned away. At the end of the day, the administration says it got about 6,000 Americans out, 200 maybe left that want to leave, that they're going to continue to work diplomatically to get out of Afghanistan. At the same time, another chain of events we have learned about, U.S. Special Operations Forces were many times on the phone with Americans trying to navigate around the airport and basically vectoring them in, saying, where are you? Walk here, walk there, guiding them step by step to get to those all-important gates where they could be let into the airport. At the end of the day, the calculation, according to the Pentagon, is that maybe hundreds of Americans got out through both these channels. Victor, Allison?
Wow.
Remarkable reporting, Barbara.
Barbara Starr there at the Pentagon, thank you. The Biden administration also says the diplomatic efforts in the region will continue. We heard that from the Secretary of State. As the military mission ends, the diplomatic mission begins. But that's going to Doha, Qatar.
So CNN's Sam Kiley is there. Sam, what happens now in Afghanistan?
Well, certainly from the perspective of the Qataris, and they arguably have the best insights into the Taliban, having hosted them throughout the period of the peace talks with the United States that were successful in some regards, and the unsuccessful intra-Afghan peace talks. They now have people on the ground regularly meeting with the Afghan Taliban and demanding of them that they make good on the promises for an inclusive government, for respect for human rights, and making sure that they understand that any kind of future trade and aid with the international community will be dependent on that. Now, from the American perspective, this speaks directly to the 100 or so Americans who still want to get out of Afghanistan. In all probability, I think, given the reporting that Barbara has been doing about Taliban escorts, that they will be safely escorted out of the country, either overland or via the airport. On top of that, the Taliban saying to their own people, you have to respect other Afghans, saying to their special forces at the airfield, stop oppressing people, do not oppress people. You've got to behave in an inclusive, pan-Afghan kind of way. So making all of the right signals, but at the same time, and this is the key issue, many of their rank and file have been programmed in madrasas, brainwashed effectively with an extremely limited and primitive form of Islam that stretches much closer to some of the teaching of Islamic State ISK, which is, of course, the greatest threat now in the immediate future to the successful Taliban rule. They effectively now have to fight an insurgency against ISIS-K, and they are aware that their own membership has been penetrated literally by members of that movement, but also ideologically there will be some crossover, and that is going to be very problematic for them in the future. Alison, Victor?
Sam, we're about 30 minutes out from the president's address on the end of the war in Afghanistan. He no doubt will address those who still want to get out of the country, who did not get on one of these evacuation flights. So what about those civilians now? What are their options?
Their options, I think, are to, and this will be handled for them by, I imagine, the American diplomatic structures that still have very close liaison with the Taliban. The American embassy's now moved from Afghanistan to Qatar here so they can work directly and via the Qataris to say to American citizens, don't worry, we will fix it, we will negotiate it with the Taliban. And I think in all probability, based on the previous behavior of the Taliban during this whole process of evacuation, that shouldn't pose too much of a problem. That is the immediate issue. Then you have the other issue of the many, perhaps tens of thousands or more Afghans who want to get out, who worked with the coalition. That is going to be trickier.
Sam Kiley, thank you very much for all the reporting. Let's get analysis now from retired Army Brigadier General Peter Zwack. He's also a Wilson Center Global Fellow at the Kennan Institute, and Kimberly Dozier, our CNN Global Affairs analyst. Great to have you both here. General, as a veteran yourself, what do you want to hear President Biden say today to mark this important day?
Thank you for the question, and it's great to see my old friend Kim Dozier online with me here. I think that the president needs to continue to say it as he sees it. We have just been through an extraordinarily rough chapter, which closed with us departing Kabul airfield after 20 years. Can you believe it? The tragic symmetry of 9/11, and now we're just a few days away. The president. We're ruining the loss of our brave service members and innocent Afghans. But if you look at what just happened with the U.S. military and friends, they just pulled off with a clear mission statement, and then they could plan against it. And it's the best big picture still executing organization in the world, and they pulled off an evacuation for the ages. I thought it was going to be worse. I was mortally worried that they were going to try to take down a jetliner. They did get in and blow a suicide bomber up on our perimeter and killed a bunch of us. But it could have been much worse. I could say much more. I think you can talk about that, and then we got to build on the future, because we're in a new chapter with Afghanistan, with the AMSITs in the other, and there seems to be some dialogue with the Taliban.
Kim, I said this with Phil just a couple of moments ago, that there are many audiences for this address, a domestic audience, a foreign policy element as well. What do you think that the president needs to address in 30 minutes from now?
The president needs to explain how he's going to make his words stick. So far, in the run-up to the departure of all U.S. troops, I was one of many different journalists, volunteers in touch with Americans who weren't permitted to go through the gates to the airport and are still stuck in Kabul. And in the past 24 hours, I have been aware of at least 2 convoys that have gone overland and been turned back at the border, and the Taliban got on the buses and forced those people to go back to Kabul. So the Taliban is not honoring its promise to the United States to let people who want to leave. They're not honoring the UN resolution that was passed to allow the free passage of Afghans and foreign passport holders. And these countries surrounding Afghanistan, they are saying, if you don't have the right paperwork, we're not letting you in. This is a huge crisis in the making.
General, what about that? What about that? What leverage does the U.S. today have with the Taliban? Because the Taliban says that they want good diplomatic relations, but really, why do they need it? I mean, aren't the Taliban still well funded by outside investors from Saudi Arabia or Iran or wherever, and they have the opium trade? I mean, do they need good diplomatic relations or not?
I think that the Taliban, while showing, if you will, exhibiting that fierce independence, they have a lot of looming issues. We saw that with ISIS Khorasan. They've inherited a bureaucracy. We were implacable foes in our day, but they have shown, and as the region, the tribes, a pragmatic shifting of loyalties and allegiances that may be part of this. The bottom line is that our AMSITs and the other people we care about in Afghanistan If we go in and we start to be really aggressive militarily, especially if the Taliban has not crossed a line, we will put any hope of getting AMSITs out and others, and lose, if you will, even a tendril of links with the Taliban in the counter-terror challenge. And so they've got a lot of issues to balance, including the extremism in their ranks and a host of other countries that are, almost in a new age great game, are kind of measuring the situation. Bottom line, though, they all can't stand radical Sunni Islam of the ISIS Khorasan type, and perhaps that is what all temporarily pulls us together.